You're looking at your bank balance on the first of the month. The Social Security deposit just hit. Your pension arrived. Maybe there's a small withdrawal from your retirement account. You know exactly what's coming in, and you've known for years now what goes out. No surprises, no anxiety, just calm. That feeling, that specific, quiet confidence, is what we're going to talk about today. Most people spend their working years chasing more. A bigger salary, a better bonus, the next promotion, and then retirement arrives, and suddenly the entire game changes. The question isn't, how do I make more anymore? Is what I have enough? And for many people, that shift creates a kind of low-grade anxiety that never quite goes away. But here's what I discovered after 2 decades in investment banking and then working with retirees. The people who sleep best at night aren't necessarily the ones with the most money. They're the ones whose expenses comfortably fit inside their income. Not barely, not with careful management and sacrifice. Comfortably. My name is David Harrington. I spent over 2 decades as an investment banking analyst and portfolio strategist, navigating market cycles, recessions, and financial bubbles. After stepping away from institutional finance, I now focus on helping everyday people, especially those approaching or enjoying retirement, understand money in a calm, practical way. Before we continue, a quick note. This isn't financial advice. Everyone's situation is different. Think of this as education to help you ask better questions and make calmer decisions. By the end of this video, you'll understand why living within your means in retirement isn't about sacrifice or settling. It's about creating the psychological foundation for everything else that makes retirement good. And you'll see exactly what that looks like in real numbers. If you find this helpful, please subscribe and hit the like button. It helps more people find this kind of straightforward retirement guidance. And turn on notifications so you don't miss future videos. Now, let's talk about what living within your means actually means when you're retired, because it's different from your working years in ways most people don't fully grasp. During your working years, living within your means was pretty straightforward. Don't spend more than you earn. Save something for the future. If you wanted something expensive, you worked more, got a promotion, or waited and saved up. Your income had an upward trajectory, even if it was modest. Time was on your side. Retirement flips that entirely. Your income is largely fixed. Social Security doesn't give you a raise because you took on extra projects. Your pension doesn't grow because you're working harder. The distributions from your retirement accounts need to be carefully managed to last decades. Time is no longer automatically on your side. It's something you're actively managing against. So when I talk about living within your means in retirement, I'm talking about something much more specific than just not overspending. I'm talking about a spending level that sits comfortably below your reliable income sources, with enough buffer that you're not constantly calculating whether you can afford something, not barely making it work, not living right up to the edge of what comes in, actually comfortable. Let me give you a concrete example. Let's say your Social Security is $2,800 a month. You have a small pension of $1,200 a month. And you're taking $2,000 a month from your retirement account, a safe, sustainable withdrawal based on your age and balance. That's $6,000 a month in income. Living within your means, the way I'm describing it, means your regular expenses, housing, utilities, food, insurance, healthcare, maintenance, everything, come in somewhere around $5,000 to $5,200 a month. Not $5,950. Not we make it work if nothing breaks. That extra $800 to $1,000 a month isn't being hoarded. It's creating breathing room. It's the difference between can we afford to help our granddaughter with her college textbooks being a stressful decision versus a generous yes. It's the difference between a surprise $600 dental bill creating panic versus mild annoyance. Here's what I learned watching people in retirement. The ones who struggle aren't always the ones with less money. They're often the ones whose expenses and income are too closely matched. Because life doesn't care about your budget. The car breaks down. The insurance premium increases. The prescription that was $40 is suddenly $95. A pipe bursts. Your daughter needs help. Someone gets sick. When your spending sits right up against your income, every one of these normal life events becomes a crisis. Not because you're irresponsible. Not because you didn't plan. But because you didn't build in enough space for life to actually happen. The psychology of this is more powerful than most people realize. When you know you have room, not wealth, not luxury, just room. You make different decisions. You say yes to lunch with friends without calculating. You replace the worn-out shoes when they need replacing, not when they're falling apart. You go to the doctor when something's wrong instead of when it's urgent. You help family when you want to help, not just when it's an emergency. This is what financial advisors mean when they talk about quality of life in retirement, even if they don't always explain it this clearly. It's not about fancy vacations or expensive hobbies. It's about the daily, weekly, monthly experience of not feeling financial pressure as a constant background hum. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. David, I'd love to have that buffer, but my income is what it is. I can't just create extra money out of nothing. And you're right. But here's what I've seen work. Most people have more control over this equation than they initially think. Living within your means isn't just about the income side. It's about the expense side. And the expense side is where you actually have control. This doesn't mean deprivation. It means clarity. It means knowing exactly where your money goes and making intentional decisions about what matters to you. I worked with a couple a few years back. Call them Robert and Linda. Their combined income in retirement was about $5,400 a month. Comfortable enough. But they were constantly stressed. Every month felt tight. They'd look at their account balances and wonder where it all went. They weren't living extravagantly. They just couldn't figure out why they always felt behind. So we did something simple. We tracked every expense for 2 months. Not to judge, not to cut everything, just to see. And what we found was fascinating. They were spending almost $400 a month on subscriptions and services they'd signed up for over the years and never really used. Streaming services they forgot they had. A gym membership Linda hadn't used in 18 months. A roadside assistance plan that duplicated coverage they already had through their car insurance. Another $300 a month was going to eating out, not fancy restaurants, just convenient meals because they hadn't planned dinner. Small stuff, normal stuff. But it added up to $700 a month they weren't even thinking about. We didn't cut everything. We kept what they actually valued. They loved their Sunday breakfast out. That stayed. Robert used one streaming service regularly. That stayed. But we eliminated the things that weren't adding any value to their life. And suddenly, they had about $600 more a month in breathing room. Their income hadn't changed. Their core lifestyle hadn't changed. But the feeling of constant pressure disappeared. That's what I mean by living within your means. It's not about becoming miserly. It's about being intentional enough that you create space between what comes in and what goes out. And that space changes everything. Here's another thing I learned on Wall Street that applies here. Institutions think in terms of margin of safety. When a bank makes a loan, when an insurance company prices a policy, when a pension fund plans its obligations, they don't cut it close. They build in cushion. They assume things won't go perfectly. They plan for the unexpected. Retail financial advice often misses this. It tells you exactly how much you can withdraw, calculated down to the decimal point. It tells you your expenses can be X based on your income being Y. It's all very precise, very optimized, and very fragile. The institutions I worked with didn't operate that way. They knew that precision in planning meets chaos in reality. So they built in buffers. They assumed higher expenses than expected. They planned for lower returns than projected. They created room for things to go wrong without the whole structure collapsing. You can do the same thing in retirement. If your reliable income is $6,000 a month, plan your lifestyle around $5,000 to $5,200. If it's $4,000, plan around $3,500. That gap isn't wasted money. It's your margin of safety. It's what lets you stay calm when the water heater dies at the worst possible time. This also protects you from something called lifestyle creep, which happens insidiously in retirement. You get used to a certain spending level. Then Social Security has a cost of living adjustment, or your investment account has a good year, or you get a small inheritance. And without really noticing, your spending drifts up to match, which feels fine until the next year when markets are flat, or there's no COLA increase, or expenses jump. Suddenly you're back to feeling stressed, even though objectively you have more resources than you did a few years ago. Living within your means, with that intentional buffer, protects you from this drift. The extra money from a good year or a COLA increase that can go towards something special or into extra savings for long-term care or to help family. But it doesn't become your new baseline spending. Your baseline stays comfortable and sustainable. Let me talk about what this looks like in different income scenarios, because I want this to be practical for wherever you are. If you're bringing in $3,500 a month in retirement, living within your means might look like keeping core expenses around $3,000. That's tight, I know. That probably means you're watching every dollar on housing. You're being very strategic about healthcare. You're not eating out much. You're driving an older paid-off car. But having even $300 to $500 a month in buffer means you're not making desperate decisions when something breaks. You're not skipping medications. You're not avoiding the doctor. You can handle a $400 surprise without it becoming a financial crisis. If you're at $5,000 a month, living within your means might mean keeping expenses around $4,200 to $4,300. You have more flexibility here. You can afford a better healthcare plan. You can help grandchildren occasionally. You can take a modest trip once or twice a year. But maintaining $700 to $800 in buffer means you're never stressed about normal life fluctuations. If you're at $8,000 a month or more, living within your means might mean keeping core expenses around $6,500. You have real choices here. You can travel. You can help family significantly. You can handle major home repairs without thinking twice. But maintaining $1,500 in buffer means you're protected against the big risks: extended healthcare needs, long-term care, major home or car replacement, supporting family through genuine crises. The specific numbers don't matter as much as the principle. Your regular spending should sit comfortably below your reliable income. Comfortably means you're not constantly calculating. You're not always on the edge. You have room for life to happen. Now, here's what makes this challenging for many people, and I want to address it directly because it's real. Many of you are reading this and thinking, David, I'm already cutting everything I can. There's no fat in my budget. We don't take vacations. We don't eat out. We're driving a 15-year-old car, and we're still right up against our income every month. If that's you, I understand. And I'm not going to tell you that better budgeting alone will solve it. Sometimes the reality is that your essential expenses are very close to your income, and the buffer just isn't there to create easily. In those cases, you're dealing with a different challenge, and it might require different solutions. It might mean considering whether you're in the right housing situation. I know that's not easy to think about, especially if you've been in your home for decades. But if your property taxes, insurance, utilities, and maintenance on a large home are eating up 40% or 50% of your income, there might be a version of your life where you're in a smaller place with lower costs, and suddenly you have breathing room you didn't have before. Not everyone can or should do this, but it's worth looking at honestly. It might mean examining whether you're in an area where the cost of living is sustainable for your income. Some places are just expensive, and if your retirement income is fixed, sometimes the most rational decision is to relocate to somewhere your dollars stretch further. Again, not easy, not without trade-offs. But if you're constantly stressed about money in an expensive area, it's worth considering whether there's a place where you'd be comfortable instead of constantly worried. It might mean looking at whether there's any way to add to your income. Part-time work, renting out a room, monetizing a skill or hobby. Not everyone can or wants to do this in retirement, and I'm not suggesting you should have to. But if the alternative is living with constant financial stress, sometimes a few $100s a month from something flexible and enjoyable can make an enormous difference. These are hard conversations to have with yourself. But here's what I learned working with retirees. Constantly living with financial stress is harder. It affects your health. It affects your relationships. It affects your ability to enjoy the retirement you worked your whole life for. Sometimes making a significant change, even one that feels like a sacrifice, creates a better life than staying in a situation that generates constant anxiety. But for many of you reading this, the issue isn't that you can't live within your means. It's that you haven't really looked at whether you are. You're assuming you are because you're not maxing out credit cards and you're not borrowing money. But living within your means isn't just not going into debt. It's creating enough buffer that you feel comfortable, not constantly vigilant. So here's what I'd suggest. Spend 1 month tracking every dollar. Not to judge yourself, not to feel guilty, just to know. Write it down. Use an app. Use a spreadsheet. Doesn't matter. Just track it. Everything. The coffee, the utility bill, the gas, the groceries, the copays, the haircut, everything. Then at the end of the month, look at what you spent versus what came in. If they're within $200 of each other, you're not living within your means by the definition I'm using. You're living on the edge, even if you don't feel like you are day to day. Look for places where money is going to things that aren't really adding value to your life. Not things you should cut, things you want to cut because they're not actually making you happier. Then make some adjustments. Create $300 to $500 of space if you can, more if possible. And here's what will happen. You'll start feeling different about money. Not rich, not suddenly carefree, just less stressed, less like every decision is significant, more like you have a little control. And that feeling compounds. When you're not stressed about money every single day, you make better decisions. You don't buy things impulsively because you're feeling deprived. You don't avoid necessary expenses that then turn into bigger problems. You don't help family in ways that hurt you financially. You're calmer, clearer, more generous in the ways that actually matter. This is what living within your means creates. Not deprivation, not sacrifice, freedom. The freedom to say yes when you want to say yes. The freedom to say no when you need to say no. The freedom to handle surprises without panic. The freedom to be generous when it matters. The freedom to enjoy your retirement without constant background worry about whether you're going to be okay. I've seen people with $300,000 in retirement savings who feel constantly stressed because their spending and income are too closely matched. And I've seen people with $150,000 who feel completely at peace because they've created real space between what comes in and what goes out. The absolute numbers matter less than the relationship between them. Here's what I want you to understand. Living within your means in retirement isn't about having less. It's about having enough space that you're not constantly managing anxiety. It's the difference between checking your bank balance with dread versus checking it with confidence. It's the difference between every unexpected expense feeling like a crisis versus feeling like a minor inconvenience. It's the difference between helping your grandchildren feeling like a sacrifice versus feeling like a joy. This is the foundation of everything else good in retirement. You can't enjoy traveling if every trip comes with financial stress. You can't be generous with family if it puts your own security at risk. You can't pursue hobbies or interests if you're constantly worried about money. You can't relax into retirement if you're always calculating whether you can afford your life. But when you're living comfortably within your means, with real buffer, real space, real room for life to happen, everything else becomes possible. Not because you suddenly have more money, but because you have something more valuable, peace of mind. That couple I mentioned earlier, Robert and Linda, about 6 months after we worked together, Linda told me something I've never forgotten. She said, "We're not doing anything dramatically different. We're not traveling more or buying more or living some bigger life. But I sleep better now. I don't wake up at 3 a.m. worrying about money. When Robert suggests going to dinner, I just say yes instead of calculating whether we can afford it. That feeling, just that absence of constant worry, that's worth more than anything we gave up. That's what living within your means creates. Not a flashier retirement, not a more impressive retirement, a calmer retirement, a more peaceful retirement, a retirement where money is a tool that supports your life instead of a source of constant background stress. You work your entire adult life, decades of showing up, putting in the hours, saving what you could, doing what you were supposed to do. You deserve a retirement where you feel secure, where you can breathe, where you can say yes to things that matter without constant calculation and worry. Living within your means, truly, comfortably within your means, is how you create that. Not through perfect planning, not through optimal investment strategies, not through aggressive withdrawal rates or sophisticated tax planning. Through the simple, powerful act of spending less than comes in, consistently, with enough space that life can happen without creating crisis. Start today. Look at what's coming in and what's going out. Find where you can create space. Make the adjustments that let you breathe easier. And give yourself the gift of a retirement where money supports your peace of mind instead of constantly threatening it. Your future self, the one 5, 10, 15 years from now, is counting on you to create that space today. Not tomorrow, not next month. Today. That's how you build a retirement that actually feels like retirement. That's how you sleep at night. That's how you enjoy the years you worked so hard to reach. Living within your means isn't about having less. It's about having enough, comfortably. And that makes all the difference.